Shannon, thanks for being here on the Insert Innovation podcast. How are we this afternoon?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Well, I really appreciate it. I know it's late on a Friday afternoon. You're probably wanting to go off to your weekend, but we're not going to let that happen. Okay. You have an important podcast to do because we have a lot of stuff to talk about. So, Shannon, if you don't mind, what I'd love to do is give a little bit of an intro so that the audience can understand a little bit about who you are. And then we're going to really peel back the onion. Today's guest is not just a communications and strategy expert. She's also running for the California State Assembly. Shannon Wingfield is a senior marketing and communications leader, very much my space. So thank you for your service there as a comms professional. With nearly 2 decades of experience building systems that simplify complexity, strengthen collaboration, and amplify voices, and often voices that are a little underserved. So I'm excited to talk about that. She also currently serves as the senior communications lead at the California Native Vote Project, where she leads statewide strategic comms to elevate Indigenous, Native, and underrepresented communities through advocacy and civic engagement. Alongside her professional career, Shannon serves in tribal leadership with the Wanyeho. Nope. Okay, I killed that one. How do I pronounce it?
The Waneno Band of Mission Indians, a Hashiman Nation.
Okay. I think I'm going to let you say that one. Now, she's bringing that same leadership to elective politics as a candidate for the California State Assembly representing District 68. And can you tell the audience what district is 68 exactly?
Right here where Chapman is. So it's West Orange, Santa Ana, and Anaheim.
So my own home stomping grounds. I grew up in Orange, Santa Ana, and Anaheim. So that's a very, very important district. And she is running to drive policy change, specifically policy change that reflects inclusive leadership and grounded community experience. So today we'll dive into the intersection of communications, community leadership, and the practical changes of running for and serving in public office. So thanks again for being here. How'd I do on the intro?
Make me sound really good.
That's the whole point, right? All right, great. We've got a lot of angles to start here. We could start with the California State Assembly. We could start with kind of your communications background. But I kind of want to mix it up a little bit and learn a little bit about you and just kind of your origin story. So can you just high level tell us where you grew up, what your family was like, and how that maybe shaped you a little bit to kind of do the stuff that you're doing now?
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up split. So my home with my dad raised me, was in Chino Hills. Before it was Chino Hills, it was just, Chino, a town.
The hills?
A town with a prison. And then it grew.
You say a
but
town with a prison?
I sure did.
I love that.
And then my grandparents lived in Fullerton. And so I spent most of my time with them. And so my elementary years were in Fullerton, and then high school was in Chino Hills. And then from there, I ended up going to college in New York, upstate New York, at St. John Fisher College, very small liberal arts Jesuit college. And I loved it and stayed in New York for a while, and then came back to California post 9/11.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you grow up around here, you go to college in New York, you come back, and how did you fall into communications? That's an interesting space. Did you study that or?
I did. So my undergraduate is communication journalism.
Okay.
And I didn't
checks
really
out.
know what I wanted to do going into college. That wasn't an option. Like, you have to go to college. That was the rule in our family. And coming from a military father, right? He went to the military, and so college was not an option during the Vietnam War for him. But he wanted to make sure I had that education.
Oh, I love
And
that.
when I was actually doing my general work here at Fullerton College, I took a class, and it was like, what are you good at? And so we went through all the things, and I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go, but comms and journalism and writing kept scoring really high. And so I thought, well, I want to be in front of the camera, and I want to be a TV news reporter. And so that's what I went to school for. And
like OG broadcast journalism.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
fun.
Out there with the microphone frozen in my hand in
Sure.
upstate New York. That's exactly what I did.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I've been in kind of the comm space for over a decade now, more on the technology side. So, in a lot of ways, on a day to day basis, I work with people just like you, public affairs, public relations, corporate communications. It's a really unique role in that, it is kind of like a natural way in which we communicate, but translating that on behalf of an organization and then navigating the media and navigating how to generate earned media. You're promoting, it's kind of like advertising, but you're not really paying for it. It's a really unique discipline. And I don't think a lot of people, one, understand really what a communications professional does, and two, understand how challenging it is because of the nuance of it. So, can you talk a little bit? And maybe let's use this as an opportunity to talk a little bit about, the California Native Vote Project. Will you talk a little bit about the role that you have there, some of the challenges that you face, but also some of the perspective that you've brought to the table that have helped you guys achieve some of your goals?
Yeah, so California Native Vote Project is very unique, and their name is a little bit of a misnomer. So it started off as a project to get people to vote for the Obama campaigns because Native Americans are very underrepresented in voting, especially our elders or people that are on tribal reservations. There is a inherent mistrust of the government, so trying to get them to register to vote was a whole thing, and that's why that was started. And now it's more of advocacy and pushing for representation, um, and uplifting the Native community because it's not generally seen in a very positive light. And so we want to make sure that the creative spirit and the politics and the
Mm.
intelligence of this community are being shown in the proper manner. And so what my department is actually really new. So I think my boss has only been there for I think he just had his year, or maybe a year and a half, and I've been there for almost a year. And so we are trying to shape the social media aspect and earning those relationships with our partners to be able to present in a bigger way, right?
Mm.
And so we've grown the social media, our social media content creator. She's very young and
Those are usually pretty good
she's
ones.
really
Yeah.
good at what she does. She was like a one-man band reporter in Alaska. She's an
Yeah.
Alaska Native, and, she has a really good eye for what she wants to create, and I like to think that I have a really good way with the words for it,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
so as a three-band team there, I think that we've really elevated our online presence and the way we are able to tell the stories.
And so that's fascinating. One, learning about this underrepresented community, not necessarily even voting, or at least a high volume of them not voting, and not because, they couldn't, but more because there was, they just didn't necessarily maybe have a lot of faith and trust. And so it sounds like that's shifted over time. And now it's about advocacy work and kind of, so, when you think about this role now, what are some of the big challenges that you face? Because a big part of this podcast is we've got a very entrepreneurial audience,
Mhm.
right? Whether that's students at Chapman that are in the entrepreneurship program, whether that's entrepreneurs and the surrounding community. And I think a big part of them understanding how to navigate the real world is understanding how people navigate challenges and overcome those. So you've done this for a hot minute. So, like, what are some of the common challenges that you face in a role like this?
I think the number one is branding, right? You have to
Mm.
find out what your voice is. And sometimes you think you know what it is, and then you charge ahead and you can succeed. A lot of times you fail, or what you think will work is not working. And I think that's what has happened a lot for this organization as well as these people's, right? And I've had other businesses that I've worked for, and it's the same thing. It's branding. It's like who you are and how do you tell that story cohesively, and
Mm.
that will attract people. And so I think right now that's our biggest challenge is getting away from a certain mindset of how we've been telling the story and then our perception of how people want to receive the messaging and then finding the middle ground.
And how do you know what works and what doesn't work? Because that's like brand voice and branding. it feels so subjective. And it's like you and I have been in the comp space for a while. So there is some methodology to it, but it's a hard thing to do, right? Because it's not like advertising where you just get a big budget and you go out there and you get to do a bunch of programmatic advertising and A/B testing and
Mhm.
see what works. It's like comms and branding is a lot more about like, okay, we're going to push this out into the public. The public's going to react and it's either going to work or it's not going to work. So like, what have you learned when it comes to like really trying to figure out what works and what doesn't? Are you doing panels? Like, how do you figure that out?
We at this organization have not done since I've been there, have done any like focus groups or panels. A lot of it is just our metrics,
Yeah.
honestly. It's because it's a very small organization and it's a nonprofit. So the budget is not super great, right? So it's what can
The
we
nonprofit doesn't have a huge budget. What are you talking about?
especially this year, right? It was
Yeah.
cut by 40%.
Yeah.
And so it's for us it's a lot of how can we do the most with what we have? And for the sake of making it easy, our department is using our our insights on the posts and for our email blasts and how is it being received? Is it being open? Is it bouncing back? Or are they not opening it at all? Are they unsubscribing? Like all of those things are really important. And it's little tiny pieces. And these little tiny pieces are either helping you grow or they're chiseling away at your business. So paying very close attention, I think, to the little things. You don't need a big budget to do it. And I think that with a lot of the tools we have right now at our fingertips, in our phones mostly even, right? Man on the street kind of stuff even for us.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's really easy to just ask.
Mm.
People are so willing to give their opinions on everything.
Yeah, right? Who would have thought? You're just asking. No, I think that grassroots like sampling, especially with your type of an audience and the people that you're serving to, I think can be really valuable. So, you're running for the California State Assembly in District 68. You've got a full-time job with the California Native Vote Project. What made you feel like you needed to get into politics, for lack of a better word? Is it just the desire to change, local policy? I mean, that's kind of a big thing to take on.
Yeah, it's scary. So having 2 terms or 1.5 terms of tribal governance. So I sit on our tribal council for my nation, which I mentioned, the Juaneño Band of Mission Indians, a Hashima Nation. It's a lot of words. Having done 1 full term and then my second half of my term now, I understand how important representation is. Our tribe is not federally recognized. So we are still, after 25 plus years, going through our process
Interesting.
and having to prove who we are to a government that didn't exist when we started, right?
Mm.
And so frustrating at the start, but we have to do the work, right? And being in tribal government, being a woman in tribal government is even more rare. I notice that we're making a difference. It was little strides in my last administration. We had a lot of hurdles to overcome. And the groundwork that our chairwoman laid out for our current administration, our pants are on fire. Like we are just flying through things right now. And if we can do that in a small nation government, a sovereign nation, then why can't I do that on the bigger scale? And running for California State Assembly, there is only one Native American legislator in all of California state legislature history, Assemblymember James Ramos, and he's the only one we've ever had. And he has 2 more terms, and we need representation, and we need female representation as
Mm.
well. There's a couple groups that have worked on getting equality in the 2 houses, Senate and Assembly, and they've accomplished that on the Senate side, but the state assembly side still needs a little more female representation. I'm up for the challenge. It's interesting because I'm running as a Democrat. My husband is a Republican.
Ooh,
I
spicy.
Yes. And so I think that having that relationship has opened my eyes to both sides of everything. We have a lot of conversations that we generally have to stop because we don't agree on a lot of things. But being able to understand the needs of an underrepresented group and then 2 larger groups combined, I think really opened my eyes to some of the things that we need changes with. And
That's really interesting. I feel like that in a lot of ways, that's a great campaign partner to have, right? I
Mhm.
mean, if you guys have obviously made it through your marriage, with kind of 2 political parties and being able to have conversations and knowing when to maybe stop those conversations, he's probably a good person to be able to be a good soundboard against, right? Bounce your ideas off. And so that brings me to another question, which is, let's get a little tactical here. Like, what are the top 2 or 3 priorities that you are gonna be campaigning on? And talk to us a little bit about, like, the ideal outcomes that come from some of those priorities.
Right. So we just finished my poll, which I do not have the results to. So my campaign consultant has that. And
So to be clear, this may
yeah,
change,
it
but yeah,
probably,
yeah.
and it will be evolving, I think, over the
You
next
have
year,
to.
right?
Yeah.
So you go into a campaign thinking, this is important to me, these one, two, three things. And then you get this poll and you're like, oh my gosh, those things weren't even on there because maybe my world is so insular that it doesn't affect, right? It doesn't affect everybody else. But for me, I think this area specifically is very unique. We have a lot of commerce in Anaheim alone, Orange, like this one section right here. We have OC Vibe
Mm,
opening, we have Angel
yeah,
Stadium, we have Disneyland, we have the Ducks, we have all of that happening right here. And I think I could stand corrected, but I think that we're probably one of the top 3 economy centers of California because of this platinum triangle,
sure.
right? And I think our small businesses, our local economy is very important. And state assembly votes on statewide things, but the things that we're voting on for this area, I think very specifically can control a lot of the commerce that happens within the state.
Interesting.
So, commerce, obviously, business development, small and local business development is also very important.
Yeah,
And then education. We have a growing number of schools that are closing in California, especially our area. And so then when you don't have enough students to go into a whole school, then they'll migrate them to other schools and the schools become overcrowded.
overwhelmed.
Yeah. And having been, I used to be a teacher. I was an English teacher. I taught 7th and 8th grade in Compton. And I know what having too many students feels like as a teacher and then not as the student because I've been fortunate to have very small classes that I went to way back when. And then housing. So housing for the unhoused, we have a lot of that. And then how expensive housing is, especially in this area. How do people afford homes? And I've seen the price of our apartments and all these new beautiful buildings that are going up and they're as much as a mortgage. I would like to wrap my head around understanding how people can afford it and what people need.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just at the Chapman Economic Development Forum thing yesterday, which I'd never been to before, but they they start big picture with kind of the US economy and then they eventually land at the Orange County, kind of more of a macro environment. And one of the big key takeaways there was this just housing crisis and the affordability crisis of it. So you don't have enough homes. The average household income isn't enough to be able to afford the average cost of a home. So these are core priorities for you. What are some of the solutions to those problems, though? Because those are big problems.
Those are really big problems. And I don't know if I have the solutions to that. Business, I think we just have to keep investing in local business. Big business will always be there, right? Whether you or I are going to, for instance, Target, right? They're still going to be there. But in the end, it could affect them. Like they have seen their dividends diminish
Mm,
since the whole political DEI, I don't want to say scandal, but issue, and making sure that you're still shopping small. Or for us, we just did a California Native Boat project. We just did a whole thing on shopping native versus, ordering on Amazon or
how does
whatever.
that? I mean, that's a great like. How does one shop native?
Yeah, we got a list from our team in Northern California of a bunch of stores, and then there's like the first native boutique in San Diego. Native Star just opened. Everything in there is by a native, it's native made, native vendor, and that's not happened before here. And
Interesting.
so supporting those dreams and the students that are in your program, they're going to be the shop small or start small, and that's where we need to support the local businesses. And then as far as education, that's a really hard one, right? Everybody needs to be educated, and every year the dollars going towards education is smaller and smaller and smaller. The current administration is dismantling our Department of U.S. Education, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes, because I'm not sure what the plans are. If they're going to do it by state, I don't understand that one just yet. But our students, we're losing students, and that's as far as like globally for the United States, not just California, that's going to be a problem for us because then we're going to have to outsource the things that we need from other places and other people. And again, then that affects our job, that affects our economy, that affects the housing that we're talking about. And then you look at housing, and I don't think it can go up anymore. I mean, my husband bought his house here in Anaheim 18 years ago, and it was expensive for him then from them during that time. And the cost, nobody could afford that now. If he was his age now, there's no way he could afford $1 million home as a young man.
Well, I mean, I've even done the math. I mean, I'm blessed, but I also worked very hard to own the home that I have in Costa Mesa, which I bought over 12 years ago. And looking at the price of my home, thank you, appreciation, but I don't
Right.
plan on moving anytime soon. I couldn't afford my house
Yeah.
right now. And that's crazy to me to think
No.
about that. It's like, and how do you expect any of the next generation to get excited about living in arguably the best state, at least from a weather standpoint,
Yes.
Taxes, we could talk about it on an entirely different episode. When they can't afford it, nobody can afford it. So I guess going back to, well, let's take a step back. So you've decided to kind of jump into this whole politics thing.
Yes.
You've got a lot of experience in communications. How are those different when you're, let's say, running a campaign for office versus running a campaign for the agency or the nonprofit that you work for now? Or are they not that different? I'm just kind of curious.
They're similar but really different, right? Because I can run the campaign from what's important to me. When I'm running a campaign for CMVP, it's what's important to our board. And that's where it gets tricky. And then
Mm,
it's what group are we talking about? Are we only talking about federally recognized tribes? Are we talking about anybody who identifies as Native or Indigenous? And you have to be very careful when you're talking to and about certain groups, right? Luckily, I think that probably 90% of the CMVP employees are Native. Little bit, a lot of it, all different types, but and from all over. We have Alaska. We have. I think I might be the only California Native in our group right now. But you have to be sensitive to those things, and running a political campaign is very similar to that. I have to be sensitive to who I need to attract, right? I don't want to offend a group. Obviously, I want everybody's support. That's not going to happen. I would like that. And somebody will be offended by something I say at some point.
yeah.
Can't make everybody happy, but I'm going to try because we are all working towards the same solution, right? And better for whichever group that you're working for. More visibility, more rights, whatever it is. So I think that they're very similar, but one, I only have to please really myself. And the other one, I have to please somebody else.
Do you prefer one over the other?
I think it's easier to please somebody else,
Ah,
honestly.
I'd say it's interesting to think about. It's like, because, when you're campaigning for office like you are, you're obviously campaigning for policies and beliefs and key priorities that you've clearly identified, but those are your beliefs. Now you're hoping that those beliefs are shared with a wide audience so that you can get the votes that you need to obviously make a difference. But, you know, it really is different in that you really are campaigning for you as an individual. How does that feel?
It's terrifying, right? Because I probably had some very off the wall theories and it's like, did I put that stuff on Facebook? Is it on social media? Is somebody gonna pull something out
Yeah.
in 5 years that like
Use it against
what
you.
does this
Yeah.
say?
Remember what
Yeah.
Shannon said on the Insert
Because I
Innovation
am sure I have been
podcast?
offensive. And
Yeah.
that's what I have to think about now. Like when I go on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and I want to comment, I want to fire something off, I have to be very cognizant of what I'm putting out there. Like when I used to drive to Starbucks over here when I managed the location, and I'd have some road rage between my house and there, and I had to think they're probably going to my store, and I have to be a nice person because I could get out of my car and walk in, and they could come order their coffee. And right, so now I'm that face. So, and I've told the same thing to my husband. You have to behave now.
Yeah. Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe there's an element of being yourself too that's a key part of your campaign, right? You can't please everybody. And so,
Just want to be genuine, right?
yes.
At the end of the day, I'm a human being, right?
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that people know that I am a genuine human being. It's not this manufactured anything, but I also have to be aware of myself, which
Yeah.
is a whole different thing.
Yeah. So you're running, you're campaigning currently. If people want to find out more about everything that you're running for and your policies and kind of what you're getting for? How do they learn more about what you're doing and how do they help you?
The website is www.shannonwingfield.com.
Ooh, you grabbed the domain. Let's
I've
go.
Yeah, I learned a long time ago that you always buy your name.
Yeah.
Always, because you don't know what's going to happen. So I have my maiden name. I was married before. I have that last
Oh,
name
look
one.
at you. You got a whole domain
Yes.
capture on all of your names.
Yes, because you
Okay.
never know. And when I started running, I thought about running, I was thinking about the California State Senate seat. And so I bought all the domains with that in there. And then I ended up choosing Assembly. And I'm like, well, now I got all these. Maybe down the road I'll be able to use them. But
Maybe
I
there's another Shannon Wingfield you
Right?
can, sell
Pawn
it
them
to.
off
Yeah.
on. But I already had Shannon Wingfield, and I was like, "Well, that's they don't have to type in this big long thing, and
Yeah.
that's me. If they search my name, it'll be easy for them to find."
Yeah.
And so everything about me is on there, and how to volunteer, and that's a big thing, is like needing volunteers and people who want to align their beliefs and ideals with me and help me reach more people. So volunteering is a big one.
Mm.
Obviously, donations are what move the needle, but it's all
And
there.
and walk us through like what the next like 6 to 12 months look like for you. Because it really starts to heat up in the summer, I believe, right? And then after that, if all things go well into the fall of 2026. Okay.
Yeah, so right now, it's still pretty quiet. There are 3 other candidates that have announced, but between now and the primaries in June, it's name recognition. It's getting your name out there and having people understand who you are, what your values are, raise the money so that you can be a contender. And unfortunately, the more money you have, the more people tend to listen, or more they tend to listen. And so that's what we're doing
Is that
right
just
now.
because you just have more promotional capability, or is it, I mean, I've never really understood that. It just allows you to get in front of more people.
Yes and no, I think. I think ideally that's what it's supposed to be, but I think at the end of the day, on the politics side, if they see you have more money, it means you have more backing and more support and more
More
reach.
influence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What a fascinating. And so, again, kind of going back to a lot of the core pillars of this podcast, which is entrepreneurship, right? Putting yourself out there, and I think you might be the first, political type of persona that we've had on this show. And in a lot of ways, I work with, the Fed all the time in my day job. A lot of ways, people don't realize that politics is very much like the cornerstone of entrepreneurship. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to clearly define a vision. You've got to campaign. You've got to solicit votes. You've got to drive revenue in the form of donorship, right? You have a fiduciary responsibility to spend that revenue in a
And
way and report. You get audit. You have all the auditing, right? And then if you are elected, then you really have a fiduciary responsibility to spend our taxpayer dollars in a way that is obviously
responsible.
responsible.
Yeah.
So help the audience understand kind of how you think about those things. And also, where do you get the confidence to do this kind of stuff? Because to your point, you said you're terrified when I asked you about it, but you're still doing it.
Yeah. Well, I always would tell my employees and anybody that I've mentored that if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. And I want to keep growing. I am a curious person. I am a lifetime learner. Like I would be in school forever if somebody else is paying for it, but it's very expensive. And I want to keep learning and I want to keep growing. Like even in this whole thing, not to mention the jobs that I have, I'm finishing my master's in legal studies at University of Oklahoma.
Currently?
Yes,
Oh,
I
you're
graduated in
crazy.
May.
You're crazy.
But I started off in a JD program and I realized I'm not prepared for this. So I took a step back. But going forward, it's I don't know where the confidence comes in because I don't feel that if you ask me like 3 traits about myself, I don't think confident would be one of them. So
What would the 3 traits be? Just curious.
uh, I think I would probably say I'm transparent, friends, family, in my business dealings, everything. I'm a transparent person. What you see is what you get. I'm generous, and I think that I am kind.
Well, I haven't known you for very long, so I'll give my 3 because I feel like I'm a pretty quick read of people. It's interesting you say the transparent thing. I was going to say genuine. I just get this sense that you're a very genuine person. So you could, I think that you're driven. I've seen drive, for the very small amount of time that we've been together. And I would say confident. I think that it takes a lot of courage to even say something like, "I'm terrified," when somebody asks you how you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm serious because, I mean, think about, I won't name politicians, but I think just politicians in general, especially senior level ones, they have this persona of like fearlessness and, I don't get scared. And I just think that there's something really valuable about acknowledging the fact that, yeah, you've never done this before.
Mm.
Most people who've never done something before would likely be scared. It's a big deal, right? You're not afraid to admit it, but you're still doing it. And that's what's important. And I think it's a good message to entrepreneurs across the board, whether you're building a software product, whether you're starting your own little mini ad agency, like a lot of the students around here seem to be doing, whether you're exiting Chapman, like this week was finals. I've seen a lot of very scared seniors ready to enter the new world and have no idea where to go from there. The key is you just kind of plow forward and you have faith in your own capabilities, right? And you're definitely showing a lot of that. So I think that that's, if anything, hopefully it gives some hope, especially to other women and maybe underrepresented women. It's good to see folks like yourself, like really pursuing some of these really big goals.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to have a face that they can identify with. And it may I'm sitting here blonde, right? I'm not your typical when you think of a Native American person. I'm not
Yeah, I
I'm not what
honestly,
you would
I
imagine.
didn't think you were, until
Yeah.
you started talking about it a little bit.
But I think that having a face or, even on paper, a person that looks like you or looks like your family or have a shared experience, I think that having that person for anybody is a catalyst for somebody to be like, "Oh, I could probably do that too." And speaking like the business side, I worked for a startup years ago and it was Fit Body Boot Camp. And so they had just started. There was 5 of us in the office and my bosses, the 2 co-founders, they were always like, "We just got to go. It doesn't have to be perfect." And that was one of the big things I think when you ask me like, how do I want to do this? Why do I want to do this? Am I terrified? Yes. But it was about imperfect action. So
Oh, I love
if
that.
you're going to start something, just do it. Get out
Yeah.
there and you can fix the things along the way and you'll learn. And like I said in the beginning, maybe it's not something that you thought would work or you thought it would work and it, flopped. But there's a lot of things that flopped and that will happen with campaigns. It'll happen with my campaign. It'll happen in your personal life, like all the things. And it was like, take imperfect action. And that was one of the big things that I took from that experience.
I love that saying, imperfect action. There's a lot to unpack in that, right?
Hmm.
Because to me, the key word is action, right? I mean, think about how many people have had that idea, have had that like invention that they've had in the back of their mind, or they think that it's the next great whatever widget, but they don't go out and try and actually file a patent or go see if someone's willing to buy it. And it feels like, everybody's very quick to judge people who take action, right? Or the people who get stuck their entire life just planning, right? Or just thinking
Right.
about it. So I love that. Well, I guess if you're thinking about, let's say, a cohort of entrepreneurs or soon to be entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
what advice would you give them in terms of how to think about where to go next and what to do and, from what you've learned?
I think have a plan, right? Don't go into it without a plan,
Just take action.
right? You
Let's be honest, I've done a little bit of that. Shoot first, ask for forgiveness later.
Oh, so have I. But even if it's on like a post-it or a napkin or in your phone, do something, right? Have a plan and then try it. And you're going to be uncomfortable and it's going to be scary. And it may be the thing that changes your life, whether it succeeds or it fails. So I think that that's probably the beginning advice. And then really step back once you start doing something, step back and, 10-story view, go back and look at
Mhm.
it and then find somebody or somebodies that you can, even if it's the professors here. And I know that if anybody came back to you and was like, "Hey, could you look at this? Are there flaws? Do you have any advice for me?" And taking the advice as advice, not as criticism. right? Because a lot of
Taking
people,
the advice as advice, not as
yeah.
criticism.
Because I think for me, I grew up I'm an only child, and I don't really take criticism very well.
I
Um,
hear you. I'm with you there. It's
and
hard.
only child, Scorpio, like a lot of things, right?
It's like you
Um,
can be told 10
yeah,
great things
but
about
I
you,
hear
but
the
the one,
one.
yeah, I know.
Yes.
Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy how psychology like that works?
um, but taking advice and taking it with a grain of salt, and depends on who you're asking, right? You could ask your best friend who knows nothing about what you're doing for the advice, and it may not be the best advice, but take it with a grain of salt and then move forward. And don't ever stop moving with that idea until it either comes to an end, like your project comes to an end, you get to sell it, you get to make it grow, or you find a partnership with somebody else that has something that's symbiotic, or you can plug it into something else.
I love that. Well, maybe to wrap it up here, I always, especially for you, I'd be curious to get your perspective on maybe younger voters. And, you know, I get the sense, and maybe I'm biased or I'm just in a unique position where I get to come across a lot of students because, they're just funneling through the program. And I am very much like you, have always been a very curious person. And I love to know, like, what are these kids listening to from music these days? Like, what social channels are they on, right? What are they watching? What influencers are they listening to? I will tell you, and maybe this is unique to where we are in Orange County, but it doesn't feel like that. I will say that there's a consistent theme with young college, you know, able voters where they're kind of disgruntled, or I don't know that they have the desire to even get out and vote right now because they just feel like their voice isn't heard. So what's the point? And I guess on it's hard to hear that. Two, especially at a local level, why should they vote? Like, help young students understand why it's important to vote for people like you, or maybe your competitor, but just vote in general. Because I feel like the sentiment right now is like, whether I vote or I don't vote, it's not going to make a difference.
Right. I think that has been the sentiment for a long time. And I I have always vote. I think I didn't there was one election where I didn't or couldn't vote because I moved states, right? But I think that it's so important to have your voice heard. If you don't vote, then you don't have a voice. And this day and age, there's a resurgence, I think, of people wanting to be politically minded and involved. And I see a lot of that in TikTok and Blue Sky and Instagram, and not so much Facebook. That's a different generation. But there are, with California Native Vote Project, there was the ICE raids and the No King's Day, and the amount of young people that were out at these rallies or at the city halls with a message, with a poster that they made at home, or and then they
Mm-mm.
brought their little sister or their cousin or their friends. And sometimes it's just like being in the moment and being in the crowd. But I think that it gives a little bit of electricity to the bigger picture,
Mm.
right? And if you don't have to say it loud. Like, your voice doesn't have to be loud, but you have to have a voice. And without voting, you basically are silencing yourself. And so I think that's register to vote so that you have the option, right? Because if you don't register to vote, then you're out of the options, right? You're relying on somebody else. And as young business people or young students that are going into the world, you need to rely on yourself and your skills and your voice, and don't allow anybody to take that from you.
Well, that was amazing, by the way. Well, I couldn't be more proud to have you here and have you tell your story. So I just want to say thank you again for coming all the way down here. And I'm really excited to see what you do with the campaign. You've earned my vote, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
So you at least got one over here.
Yay.
I'm just kidding. You'll have a lot more than that. Um, any parting words for the audience before we close?
Take action, go vote, and come out and volunteer.
I love it. All right. And we'll cut there. Okay, nice work. Here, let me just stop this real quick. Um